All right. Brilliant. Well, I'll introduce myself again. I'm Pam Rigdon. I am founder of NLP for Coaches, and we are all here today to talk about beliefs and limiting beliefs. So before we do that, let's pop in the chat what it is that you're hoping to get out of today, because you've all seen the class advertised, something spoke to you. Obviously, it's not a short class, it's a 3-hour class. So there has to be a reason that that you put your name and email in that box and hit subscribe and why you're here. So I'd love to know what that reason is and what you're hoping to get out of the day. And I'll have a look through those, and hopefully we will be able to address most of what's coming up here. Okay, let's have a look. Perfect. Curious to learn more about NLP. We're doing a very little chunk of NLP today on beliefs, because NLP, of course, is absolutely huge. Beliefs is a fairly big topic within NLP, and we've got 2.5 hours, and I'll do my best. Okay. Looking for ways to help clients, tools to help clients. Yeah, a refresher. Yes, we actually do have practitioners and master practitioners who join, who like a refresher, a different perspective, new tools. Some of what I teach is kind of not what you might get on a regular standard NLP course anyway. So more tools, NLP tips, yes, to support spotting limiting beliefs. That's really important, absolutely, because you have to be able to spot them first and foremost to be able to do anything about them. So absolutely identifying them. All right. And what does that take? First of all, that takes listening, which actually is the first L in NLP, because we need to listen to what our client says, their language, and that's how we pick up on the clues. So a deeper understanding of NLP, really interested in NLP, its use of limiting beliefs. Excellent. A better understanding of addressing limiting beliefs with clients. That's Alice. Gemma, a deeper look at my own limiting beliefs. Okay, yeah, well, you're going to be able to do that too. There's the workbook, looking for more info. Support clients better. All coaches want, don't they? Don't we, to support our clients better than we can now, to do our absolute best by them. Refresher, CPD, brilliant. Okay, more about NLP, limiting beliefs. I'm not sure if any of you have had a chance to look at the workbook yet, but there's a lot of information in there. Yes, understand the ICF competencies and tools for myself in terms of limiting belief. To see if NLP will be the right thing for me and my clients. To have a light bulb moment, unless that means you've had one already, Sarah. That would be cool. Hopefully there will be lots of light bulb moments today. All right, fantastic. Shall we leave it there with a light bulb moment? I think that's a good place to leave it. Amazing. So let's get this workbook up on the screen, shall we? And have a look what we've got. Where is it? Oh my goodness me. It will be here somewhere. Yes, there we go. Wasn't too painful. So when I teach using a pattern called the why, the what, the how, and then finally the what if. And the why, everybody has a different motivation for learning, and some people really need to know the why. Why are we actually here? Why are we bothering to do this? What am I going to get out of it? Which ties in nicely to the questions that the question you've just answered for me. And then we're going to be looking at the what. So what are limiting beliefs? And then we get on to the how. I know as coaches, you're all absolutely dying to get onto the how. And then the what if is, what if I go away and apply this? What difference is that going to make to me, my clients, my coaching business? Okay, so that's the kind of what if, imagine when we get very creative. That to start with, let's look at this why, shall we? Why is it important that you can notice, identify, we picked up on this from the questions, your clients' limiting beliefs? And why is it important that you can actually help them resolve those limiting beliefs, let go of them, park them, put them to bed, whichever phrase works for you and your clients, and then ideally create new supportive beliefs. Why is it important that we can do that? Well, ultimately, your success with your clients, your client's success will depend on this, because 99 times out of 100, when a client is stuck or they're saying they'll do X, Y, and Z, and then they don't do X, Y, and Z, or they're in conflict, most of the time, underpinning those issues are limiting beliefs. And so that's why this is so important, that you can actually work with your clients' beliefs so that you can help them move forwards. Okay, this can absolutely transform your work with your clients. So important that we can do this. And as we said earlier, the first stage is listen for their language to pick up on the clues, which we're going to talk about. From a personal perspective as well, coaching will be more rewarding for you when your clients are flying and they shine and they're getting what they came for and more than what they came for. That for you as a coach is the most rewarding thing. And more important often for many, many coaches, most coaches, than the financial gain or anything else. It's all about helping your clients. So when you're able to do this, the payback in that respect is absolutely huge, because your job is done when you see them absolutely hitting their goals. So now the thing is here, what I've noticed, particularly over the last 10 years since I started working with coaches, I used to work in the fitness industry, and I didn't expect necessarily that personal trainers and yoga teachers would have the vocabulary around limiting beliefs, let alone really know what they were or what to do about them. When I started working with coaches, I had a different expectation, and I imagined that most coaches actually would have that vocabulary and that they would have skills. They would be able to, they would know what limiting beliefs sounded like. They'd be able to identify them. They'd be able to work with them. And what I discovered was that there actually wasn't very much difference, if any, between the coaches who I was working with and training and the fitness professionals who I used to work with. And I found that astounding, because coaches have the vocabulary in that we all talk about limiting beliefs. And actually, sometimes that's it. And I don't really understand why, except that coach training, frankly, I've written it here somewhere, is woefully inadequate when it comes to actually teaching you about how to work with your clients' limiting beliefs. So if this is something that you haven't done a lot of. Don't worry, it's not your fault. If you haven't been taught how to do this, then how would you know? And I think the biggest challenge that faces us today is we don't know what we don't know. And so often coaches are blissfully unaware that there are all of these tools and processes that they could be using to help their clients. And that's a pity. And that's why we're here. And I'm so pleased that so many of you are here so that you can really take value from today and then take what you learn away and apply it with your clients, because that's what needs to happen. You know, this isn't a put another manual on the shelf and it sits there collecting dust. It's a roll your sleeves up and go and actually use these processes with your clients this afternoon, if not this afternoon, tomorrow. Okay, because you will be able to do that. And I would love for you to do that. And I'd absolutely love to hear how you get on. Okay, we are here for that. So if at any point you want to email me or LinkedIn, comment, whatever, after the masterclass to say, well, I've done this, I did that, I would love to hear from you. Okay, because that makes me very happy when I know that the students I train are actually using what they've learned. Makes me so happy. All right, so what are beliefs and limiting beliefs? I think it's important to get our heads around this. So, in essence, a belief is simply a thought process that your client holds to be true. They're not necessarily true, and your client absolutely believes this thought process is true. It is their fundamental truth. Now, hold on to that because I'm going to keep coming back to it, okay? Now, beliefs vary, what we call throughout the range of unconscious to conscious. Some beliefs are formed at a very early age, and we're not aware that they're running like a computer program. That is where the programming word came from, in the background. Others, we create them later in life and we are aware of them, and we're aware of when we created them. So they're all stored in there somewhere, and sometimes they're stored in clusters. They're kind of related to each other, and sometimes they're attached to values. That all gets quite technical. What we need to really hold on to is that idea that for the person who holds the belief, whatever that thought is true. Okay. Really important. Now, the thing is with these beliefs, some of our beliefs absolutely support us, and they feed into our thinking, if you like, and the way we look at the world, and then have a positive impact. And that has a positive impact on our results. Other beliefs are not quite so helpful. And those ones are the ones that we refer to as limiting beliefs. I know in some practices they're called self-limiting beliefs or negative beliefs. In NLP, we tend to call them limiting beliefs. Same thing, okay? Don't get hung up on the different terminology. Basically, a belief that is holding us back, or in common parlance, it might be called a block or an obstacle, something that's getting in our way. When clients are, how we say, getting in their own way, it's often due, more often than not, 99 times out of 100, due to limiting beliefs running in there, whether they're aware of them or not. So there's a model. I actually cover this model. It is the first masterclass that we cover in my expert NLP coach program. And it's called neurological levels. Nobody really knows why, because they are neither neuro or logical. And however, out of deference for the wonderful Mr. Robert Dilts, who developed this model, that's what we call it. So we hold beliefs at different levels. This is important too, because it begins to inform you as to what it is you need to listen for. Now then, some beliefs are held at the level of capability. We sometimes call that the skills level. And it's around possibility and whether you can or whether you can't. So a limiting belief at that level would be the example on the page: I can't lose weight, I can't run a marathon. A lot of people blasted that belief yesterday. So I can't, or it could be I can. And you're probably all familiar with Henry Ford's famous quote, if I can get it right: whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you are probably right. Again, picking up on the fact that your client absolutely believes I can't run a marathon to be true. Okay. Or your clients might have beliefs and limiting beliefs at the level of identity. Those ones, ouch, that's uncomfortable, sound like I am just a fat person. I'll never change. That is what we call an identity level, in this case, limiting belief. It's identity level because it starts with I am. It's limiting because of the I'll never change. And the never word, I'm going to ask you in a moment about beliefs that you've heard. The never word is a generalization, and whenever you hear a generalization, that is a clue that you are in what I call the land of limiting. I'll never change. It always goes wrong, etc., etc. And then we can hold beliefs. So we've gone from capability to identity, and now we're going right up to what we call beyond identity, which is the level which is bigger than simply ourselves. And we hold beliefs at that level as well, about the world that we live in and the people in it, our fellow however many billion inhabitants. The limiting belief stated there is one that a former master's level student brought to her master's level training. The world is a cruel place and people are spiteful. Ouch. That had caused her all sorts of issues, particularly in the workplace. I think we might come on to the story behind that later. So that is really big. It's what we also call a global level belief, and not helpful. Can you imagine waking up every morning and stepping out of your front door, and that's the thought process that's running? Try and put yourself in that place for 30 seconds. Not good. So this is really important because understanding the level that the belief is held at will inform you as to how to move forwards and which process would be the best one to rely on, because each level calls for a slightly different approach. Okay, so that's why it's important to begin listening for these I can, I can't, the I am statements, and then the big kahuna global statements about the world. Okay, kind of makes sense, doesn't it, that you might need a slightly different approach depending on the level that that belief is held at. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think there's just a little bit more there I've already covered, so that's okay. There it is, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't. I think the actual quote is "you are right." I always throw in a probably for effect, but I think the original was that one. Okay. So your job, as I've said, is to listen really carefully, because you're not going to pick up on which level your client's beliefs are held at if you don't hear them. So first and foremost, listening, and then really getting into the habit of thinking, that was a capability belief. Oh, wow. Okay. Identity. Listening for I can, I can't, I am. Just keep listening. Listen, listen, listen. It's that really is the first L in NLP, and it ties in beautifully, of course, with the ICF core competency of listening actively, active listening. I think it's that one. Can't quote the number off the top of my head. It's a big one. Okay. So there are, way down the line in NLP, certain techniques. I use the word processes. There's one particular one called prime concern elicitation, which you can use to uncover unconsciously held beliefs. However, that is for coaches and practitioners who have a certain level of understanding and training, and it is or can only be used when you are face to face with a client, not in a Zoom room. Okay. And it makes sense because when stuff is held unconsciously, your client and yourself as coach actually have no idea what might come up. And there are certain things that could come up that you really wouldn't have to deal with when you are potentially on the other side of the world from somebody. So we don't use those really, really, really intrusive, in a way, processes online. And that's you. If you do any further training with me, you'll get to know me a little bit more, and possibly you've seen my posts on LinkedIn about that, but that comes down to integrity and what it is and what it is not appropriate to do online. Okay, so I've talked about that word already, and we come on to it again. Generalizations. Another way of describing a generalization is a rule. We make rules. And we do that so that we can actually predict what might happen in the future based on what has happened before. But that is where the limiting piece comes in, because, of course, what that then does is sets us up to simply experience more of the same, because that's what we're focusing on. And actually, what happens when you have that filter of the world is a cruel place and people are spiteful, you create that in the present day because you don't see anything else. You go out there looking for it, and all of the good stuff gets missed because you go out there intending to confirm your belief. Okay? And we create these beliefs when we are so young, and then they kind of run sometimes for the rest of our lives, or at least until you get some really decent coaching or sign up for an NLP course. That was when I sorted all of mine out. Didn't even know really that I had any. But it's a revelation, I think, because unconsciously held. How would you know? And I love that phrase there at the bottom. The word generalization didn't really make much sense to me until I saw that phrase. In a good way, you can use generalization to learn. It helps us categorize things and organize information. But at its worst, and I love this, it is how we take a single unhappy event or traumatic event and then turn it into a lifetime of unhappiness. And that is really so very sad, because what was real for that younger version of ourselves isn't real now. We've moved on, we've grown up, but our thoughts haven't. Now, that student that I told you about actually created that belief when she was 4 years old, and the significant emotional event that was significant for her, and I'm sure many of you will listen and think, what was the big deal? Actually, what happened was some children took a bag of sweets off her in the playground and threw them on the floor. And that was when she came to that, another good word, conclusion. Because conclusions are very final. And how useful is it to conclude when we're 4 years old? Not very. And that was the conclusion she came to. The world's a cruel place. People are spiteful. And that was why, when I said it caused her all sorts of problems at work, she actually had a really enriching personal relationship and very happy relationships with her children. But she'd really struggled to hold down jobs. And that completely makes sense, doesn't it? Because the people in her workplace were equivalent to the children in the playground. So, yeah, there you go. The world is a cruel place and people are spiteful. There's the story, it is in there. A limiting decision is kind of the limiting belief that comes first, if you like. We simply call it a decision because you make a decision, you come to that conclusion. And it's the first in the line then of often many limiting beliefs that then hook on to that one. It's the first one in the line. So just for terminology. Oh, and as I say, yes, she really did a very good job. Not only of finding evidence to back up her belief, she was actually really good at what we call distorting. So when she would describe events to us that she felt were evidence that people were being spiteful, I kind of, didn't get it really. It's kind of like, okay, for her, in her model of the world, absolutely. And we are respectful of that. And if from our perspective, that's kind of like, really, okay, really? You think that person was being spiteful? That's when you kind of begin to question like the level of distortion that's going on in somebody's head in order to fit with what they believe the world is like. Okay, and of course that can tip over into mental health issues, and the biggest example of distortion is of course paranoia. Okay, all right. Oh my gosh, so we yes, let's lighten the mood before we come on to this one. You can't coach wearing pajamas. I think at this point it would be really helpful if you drop into the chat now some of the limiting beliefs that you've come across now that you have hopefully a greater insight into the actual structure of what a limiting belief might sound like. So the I can't, I am statements about the world, the people we hang out with. I think if you can drop into the chat some of the limiting beliefs that you have come across with your clients, that would be really helpful. And I come back to the chat at the same time? No, I don't think I can. Let's have a look and see what you've got. Maybe I can. Chat. Let's have a look, because when we come on to our practical work later, you are going to be trying on some of these limiting beliefs for size so that your coach that you're working with can actually work with it's a role play, an actual real limiting belief. Okay. I'm not confident enough. So we've got an I am statement in there. That is an identity level belief. We've got two other things in there which we come on to in a moment on our checklist of how to identify beliefs. The not, a negation, suggests beliefs, and the enough word, because that's a comparison. Compared to what? Not confident enough compared to what or to whom? That takes us into comparison. As I'm sure, well, you may not be aware, whenever someone is in that place of comparing themselves, there is more often than not when a limiting belief sitting under there. Who is going to engage me when I start coaching? Limiting belief. Who is going to? Kind of phrased as a question. I would ask Yemi, can you Tell me a little bit more about that and whether you believe that somebody will engage you when you start coaching. Tell me a bit more in the chat. Ruth, I am not senior enough. Again, an I, the negation, and the enough. Okay. Are you beginning to see that there are patterns here? Different clients, different coaches have told us these, and yet patterns. And patterns equals the P in NLP. I know the original word was programming. I've changed it. We've got neuro for what goes on in our heads. We've got L for listen, and listen to your client's language instead of linguistic, kind of the same thing. And then we've got patterns of behavior, patterns of language. Language is one aspect of our behavior, and that's the P rather than the rather scary word programming, which frankly didn't do NLP many favors. So I'm not academic, I'm not worthy of success, so they're all identity level. I don't have enough time, there's another enough, don't, there's a negation in there. I cannot stop interruptions. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah, and absolutely a limiting belief. There's a negation in there, a negative. I am stupid, lazy. Oh, I don't have the right background. My face doesn't fit. Limiting belief, limiting belief. I am a people pleaser. That's a identity level. And what else? I'm so disorganized. I am too old to change. Another identity level one. I'm not creative. I'm not clever enough. I'm not able to cope on my own. I'm not a great mum. Are we seeing the negations in here? I'm not good enough. The comparisons, no one will take me seriously. There's another generalization, no one. So just like no one, not anybody anywhere, anybody at all. Okay, so it's the huge generalizations that are your clue, like limiting beliefs. Okay. They are all better than me. Everything will be a disaster. There's one, everything. I used to have one. Oh my God. Nothing is straightforward. I used to say it all the time, and surprise, surprise, nothing was straightforward. I'm not 100% convinced actually that it has completely departed. How can things aren't always straightforward? That's at least better. But yeah, they're in there. You know, we have to pull them out and address them and deal with them and put them through these processes that we're going to cover. Everything will be a disaster. I'll never be confident. There's another one, the generalization, never. When I experience rejection, I just give up. Oh, I'm not good enough for that promotion. I can't work with difficult people. There's an I can't. Okay. I'm different and will never fit. There's another generalization with the never. Are you seeing the patterns? Are you beginning to grab these? This is why it's so useful. And they're all coming from different, I can't make a change. I can't do anything. I'm not clever enough. So we've got the identity, the negative, the comparison to do that course. I can't run. I'm not sure what comes after that. I'm no good at managing people. There we go. I can't read. It can't change. Relationship. This always happens to me. There's another one, generalization. I can't break the glass ceiling, in this case, a six-figure salary, now that I'm working in a multinational. Well, that's a really helpful belief, isn't it? Okay, so again, the I can't. And it's how we take that client from I can't to I can. That's what's coming in the how. Okay. My voice is annoying. I'm not clear enough. Is never enough. I'm not assertive. There's the negative. It's in my genes. Okay. That one's never helpful. I could never look as good as you. There's the never. I am rubbish at. I can't coach managers, leaders. Okay. To have a senior role means you have to sacrifice your personal life. Okay. I am too sensitive to be able to be a coach. I later discovered that my empathy was one of my greatest strengths. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I am too sensitive. Identity level. And two, the two word is the comparison in there. Okay. I can't budget. I'm just bad with money. That sounds like someone's given up at that point. I can't budget. That's a capability level. So that's about the skills. And then it's gone up to identity level. I'm just bad with money. Not surprisingly, if you had two separate clients and one of them held the first belief, I can't budget, and the other client held the, or both of them, but certainly the I'm just bad with money, your job as a coach is going to be much easier to help the client who is telling you I can't budget. And that's because the belief is held at that level of capability, and that impacts how they behave, presumably. But we're talking capability and behavior rather than identity, because as soon as the belief is taken up to the level of identity and it becomes literally part of who the person is, rather than simply what they do, that is a lot harder to address. It can still be done. I'm just flagging it up that it's not as easy to do. Okay. All right. Whereas the I can't is more straightforward. There's that word. It's not worth addressing climate change. Oh, it's making me cross, that one. Okay. Of course it is. I'm not going down there. Not going down there. I can't run. I have no stamina. I shouldn't be doing whatever this way. I can't do presentations. I'm not good at selling. I am an anxious person. I can't do that. I've tried it before. It doesn't work. I'm not getting a promotion because, my goodness me, if they challenge how I do things, then they don't respect me. I hate social media. I can't lose the weight because I'm in perimenopause now, and science confirms that it's difficult now with the changes in my hormones. That is the biggest nightmare for any personal trainer or health coach to hear. Yeah. Okay. I'm not fast runner. I've never been confident enough. There's a generalization in there, the enough word. No one likes me. That's the generalization. No one, so not anybody, not one single person on the face of the entire earth actually likes me. I'm not good at chatting to people. I always think the worst. I'm not making progress. I'm not good enough to do this. I'm a bad father. I can't write well. I'm too old, young. I can't do social media. I don't know how many more there are. I think we're getting the idea here, hopefully. Oh, gosh. All right. Let's shake them off. Shake them off. Let us have a little bit of lightheartedness, shall we? Because it's hard work as a coach. And there's a belief for you to have to work with clients' limiting beliefs. And that's not a helpful limiting belief to have either. That's funny. You see, they're there all the time in the background and they just pop out. So you can't coach wearing pajamas, or so I was told many years ago. Somebody told me that. Someone told me that actually you have to wear a suit. Okay, then. So beliefs about coaching. This up here for a moment. I took this from a LinkedIn post that I wrote a while back. It is always very popular. And actually, I have heard all of these. I have, my gosh, I trained as an NLP coach started my training in 2001. So that's like 23 years ago. Oh my goodness. I have literally heard all of these beliefs about coaching. And again, it's this important concept for the person who made these statements. They absolutely believed that what they were saying was true. Okay? And that is what a belief is, something that is true for the person who believes it, but it isn't necessarily true. And what actually matters is whether those beliefs support you or hinder you. Now let's have a look what we've got here. Beyond identity. So I've picked up on the DILT model levels and I've put all of these beliefs that I've heard about coaching into the levels for you to reinforce that model. So beyond identity, global beliefs, I have heard all of these. Here we go. The International Coaching Federation is the best coaching organization. The EMCC Global is the best coaching organization. The Association for Coaching is the best coaching organization. Okay, well, they can't all be right, can they? And it doesn't matter. The point is, for the person who said that, that is their truth. It's true. Okay? The benefits of coaching are transformational and life-changing. I would hope you all buy into that one. I have also heard coaching doesn't work. Love this one. Coaching is better than therapy. No surprises. A coach said that. Therapy is better than coaching. A therapist said that. Again, they can't both be right, can they? But it's their truth. And then we come down to identity level belief. And these align with some of those that we've just been looking at. And actually, some of those technically, I think, belong on the skills level. But I am too old to be a coach. I am not old enough to be a coach. Okay. I don't have enough experience to be a coach. I've heard all of these. I can't coach clients who are older than me. I can't coach clients who are younger than me. I can coach anybody. Okay. Now, I've heard that a lot. Not necessarily helpful when it comes to marketing yourself, but I've heard it. I can't charge clients until I have finished my training. So we've got some can'ts in there. There's an I in front of them. So they've snuck into the identity level. They're kind of hovering between the two. Okay. Oh, I'm going to have to explain these ones. This is so important. I am struggling to find clients. Okay. That bit may well be fact. And what's happened next is that the coach having that experience has added an equal sign. And they have made that experience mean something about them and their coaching ability. Now, that is what we call a complex equivalence. It's where two things that aren't necessarily equal have been made to be equal. And that isn't helpful because they've made it equal. I am not good enough, in brackets, at coaching. Well, that simply isn't true. And yet it could be true. Chances are, though, it's not true. We have to remain respectful of that coach's perspective whilst working with that equals in the middle. And the first way you can challenge that structure of limiting belief is with a reframe where you very simply ask, because we know that that equals means. And we know that they've made it mean I am not good enough. And our suspicion is that that in fact isn't true. And we call that a distortion. And we want to challenge the equal sign. And we do that simply by saying, and what else could that mean? Okay. Now, that is one of the most powerful things that you can do when you come across one of these, this structure of limiting belief, is simply, and what else could that mean? Because in your client's head, they have never yet considered the possibility that it could mean anything else because they are just joined together. And we're helping them to pull that apart by asking that question. Now, that's one that someone has created, presumably later in life, because it's about coaching. And what else it could mean, and we know what else it could mean, they don't have any marketing skills. Is normally what that's about. It's not anything to do with their ability as a coach. And yet that is where somebody ends up when they're struggling to find clients. Now, when we create that type of limiting belief when we are younger, our approach is exactly the same in the first instance. And you come across that all the time. Someone has had an experience. So let's take an example, quite a common one, of a child whose mum or dad or both didn't turn up for sports day. Equals, they don't care about me. And it doesn't stop there normally, because the person, the child, then says to themselves, and if that equals they don't care about me, what must that mean about me? That must mean I'm not worth caring about. Why am I not worth caring about? Because I'm not worthy, I'm a bad person, or we fill in the blanks. We distort and then fill in the blanks. All of that is not true. And those two things in that child's head have been linked together. And of course, that question, and what else could that mean from an adult perspective? What else could that mean that mum and dad didn't make it to sports day? The car broke down. Their sibling broke their leg. It could be many, many things. It could just mean they forgot, which isn't brilliant, but it doesn't actually mean they didn't care about them. Okay? but we have to challenge that equals sign. And then there's another interesting one there. If I get more qualifications equals, I will find clients. May be true, may not be true. Okay, those two things don't necessarily go together. Capability level. Oh my gosh. These are at the base of many, many LinkedIn rants, aren't they? You have to be qualified to be a coach. You don't have to be qualified to be a coach. You need to have experience to be a coach. You don't have to have experience to be a coach. Qualifications are more important than experience. It's more important to have experience and qualifications. Ouch. ICF credentialed coaches are better than, more skilled than all other coaches. I actually heard that from an ICF credentialed coach in a group session where there wasn't any other ICF credentialed coaches. Talk about putting your foot in it. I was like, went down well. Capability level beliefs. You have to be ICF credentialed, otherwise you're not a real coach. I think that was the same person on another occasion. You have to have a postgraduate qualification to be successful. Oh, this one's shocking. Action coach, business coaching, business coaches are not, there's a typo there, are not real coaches, is what that should say. I think that was the same person too. Coaches can, oh, well, here we go. Coaches can use NLP within their coaching practice to be more effective. Absolutely. However, to an extent, I also believe the last one, NLP does not belong in the coaching space. And it really depends on your definition of NLP. It certainly depends upon the ICF's definition of coaching and NLP. Very brief sideline. The reason that we have ICF accreditation for our NLP masterclasses is because, I don't have the picture up on my wall, but if you can imagine a Venn diagram, two circles coming together, one is NLP, one is coaching. The piece that I teach is where the circles overlap. And actually, it's a very small piece. And what happens when coaches get very excited about NLP and think, oh, I'll go and do a practitioner course, is they go and do a practitioner course, 7 days, 16 days, 7 hours, whatever the practitioner course is. And actually then what they discover is that they have lots and lots and lots of techniques, and they are absolutely clueless as to what to do with them, because when you are a coach and you coach in the style that probably most of us understand coaching is, so having a coaching conversation, it's really difficult. You can't switch from a conversation to doing one of these things. It would be very clunky. It doesn't work. And actually, NLP is not coaching. It truly is not coaching. You have to, there's huge swathes of it that you cannot use safely online. So you have to take all of that out. You then have to adapt what is left so that you can bring the essence of those techniques, and I then call them processes, into, adapt them in a way that you can use them within a coaching conversation. And that is why I have ICF accreditation for these sessions, because that's what I've spent the last 23 years doing, basically. So yes, I believe both of those, which might be a surprise to you. Coaches absolutely can use NLP to be more effective. And to an extent, NLP does not belong in the coaching space. So that always surprises people. Beliefs about coach training schools. I'm sure you're getting the idea here. Barefoot Coaching Limited is the best. Henley Business School is the best. Optimus Coach Academy is the best. The Coaching Academy is the best. Marshall Goldsmith Group, Coactive Training Institute. Again, they can't all be right, but the person who said it believed that they were. Beliefs about the business of coaching. If you have some of these, you might want to address them. Nobody, generalization, will pay for coaching. No one, generalization, knows what coaching is. I won't, can't be successful because there are too many coaches. Well, those are interesting discussions to be had. The market is saturated. If you do the statistics, according to LinkedIn, 303,000 coaches in the UK, do the maths with a population of 46 million adults over the age of 25, and that actually is one coach for every 130 people. And I will let you draw your own conclusions about whether that means the market is saturated or not. Okay. Those are the hard facts. Successful coaches have a niche. Many do. You don't have to choose a niche to be successful. Coaching is worth £50 an hour. Coaching is worth £500 an hour. Charging £500 per hour for coaching is immoral. Beliefs about coaching practice. Coaches shouldn't ever give advice. You can't be a coach and a mentor. You can't coach on the phone over Zoom, and yet here we all are. Coaching on the phone, Zoom is more effective. Coaching sessions have to be an hour long to be effective. You only need 10 minutes to coach someone. Executive coaches should wear suits like their clients. That's the one. And here you go. You absolutely can coach while wearing pajamas. I promise, I have done it. So we probably don't realize in the passage of our everyday lives that beliefs are all around us all the time. We probably don't realize that half of the things that we say are beliefs. And when you begin to look at those kinds of statements, oh yeah, oh yeah. So let's come on to, for a moment, if I may, because this is really very my personal perspective on this, conclusions that I have come to after many years of coaching and doing a lot of thinking. And I was very troubled. I haven't seen as many lately, but a couple of years ago, it was really, really popular to talk about the client's story. So posts and coaches who were telling me and referring to their clients' limiting beliefs as stories, the story that the client is telling themselves. I've even seen somebody write lies, saying to their client, they are just lies. You are lying to yourself. Okay, well, let's unpack this, shall we? Let's unpack this. So let's take the I can't lose weight example. And as a personal trainer or a health coach, you absolutely know that this person could lose weight with the right support. And if they did the things and didn't do the things that they needed to do and not do, you absolutely know that they could. So you know that this statement, I can't lose weight, is a limiting belief. It's not true. We know that. So in the privacy of our own heads, we can think, well, that's a story the client's telling themselves, or a lie even. But let's dial this right back. The point is about beliefs that the person who holds the belief absolutely believes it to be true. It is their sacred truth. Now, our job, and someone mentioned this earlier about being sensitive and empathy, it is our job in NLP, we call this rapport, is to build, I think ICF speak is trust. Whichever word we use as a coach, it's our job to create that, to build that. And the way that we encourage students to do that in NLP is to step into their client's model of the world and to be respectful of their client's model of the world. And this client's model of the world is, I can't lose weight. What was the beginning part of that statement? I'm just a fat person. So it's our job to step into their model of the world and try that limiting belief on for size and to empathize with them. So saying to them, that's a story, it's not true, you're lying to yourself, that's not really building rapport, is it? In fact, it's doing the opposite because it is not honoring their current reality. It's a really skewed approach, in my opinion. And yet it's enormously popular. It was a little bit trendy. I hope it's gone past, kind of past to an extent. But you are really missing the point. Remember that phrase, sacred truth. It is your client's sacred truth. We can only help them shift that limiting belief, and that's what you're all here to learn how to do. If first of all, we honor their truth. And we do that by building rapport, stepping into their model of the world, building empathy with them. We don't do that by breaking rapport and trust and not showing any empathy at all by saying, well, that's just a story you're telling yourself. Well, that's not going to work, is it? Because they believe it's true. So that's just like this. That's not working. So that's my view and on what I call stories and lies, because I keep hearing that. And yeah, but by all means, read the post. I think this is actually just a copy of the post that we've got here. Just think about that for a moment. When somebody accuses you of lying, how does that make you feel? It's not good. All of those things: uncomfortable, defensive, annoyed, angry. So that's not a good start for a coaching session. Okay. Yeah. There's that element of the client will defend that. they're going to try and defend this belief anyway. And if you get like that with them into conflict, it's not helpful. We don't want our clients, what's the phrase? Do no harm. It's our job to support our clients and help them grow and move forwards. That's actually borderline causing harm in my book. So for what it's worth. And then we get even more controversial. Do you mind if I have a mouthful of coffee before I come on to debunking imposter syndrome? I think I need it. That's good. Okay. Well, this was one of those posts on LinkedIn that blew up. Can't tell you. I think I put up a little thing that said 99% of people who think they have imposter syndrome probably don't, or something like that. And that went bonkers. I will explain myself. And I'm talking here about our coaching practice rather than perhaps our marketing material. Because if you're a coach who wants to work with all of those people who think they have imposter syndrome, then absolutely you would use that in your marketing material. However, this is my perspective. How do I explain this? Yeah, there you go. 99% of people who think they... Well, here's the thing. As adults, when we are confronted with a new situation, it is absolutely normal to wonder and to ask ourselves, am I up for this? Am I good enough to do this? Let's say a new job, a promotion. That's normal. That's absolutely normal. It's even normal to be a bit worried about it. Anxious even. And the structure of the sentence going on in the head, it's a question. Am I good enough? And when someone is in that space of asking themselves, am I good enough? I call that self-doubt rather than imposter syndrome. Because there is a world of difference, a great gaping chasm of difference between somebody asking themselves, am I good enough? Wondering whether they are good enough, and believing I am not good enough. It's a very subtle difference there. Am I good enough? I might be, I might not be. And that's true. They might not be when it comes to it. And that is worth worrying about. That's normal. Whereas I am not good enough, that's a huge limiting belief. And they believe that, so they're not going to be good enough because that's what they believe already. So it's not a question, it's actually, I'm not good enough. And that's, everything comes after that. That informs everything else. Those two things that I have described are very, very different. And I think the huge explosion in people thinking that they have imposter syndrome is because actually they are experiencing self-doubt. And either they have self-diagnosed themselves, they have diagnosed themselves, or a well-meaning coach has said, oh, you have feelings of imposter syndrome. The original study, I can't remember. Have I got it here? Don't know if I've put the researchers' names in. No, I haven't, because it was a LinkedIn article and you don't have to do that in LinkedIn. What I would describe, for sake of differentiation, as true imposter syndrome, what the original researchers observed was that the women who exhibited these characteristics had, not surprisingly, a group, a cluster of limiting beliefs in common. And they were all identity level, beyond identity level, limiting beliefs. So not self-doubt, not questioning, but actually, I am not good enough. I am not as good as the other people here. The other people here are going to notice that I'm not good enough. I am a fraud, or I'm going to get found out. I'm just not going to. That's a very different thing. Now, we can absolutely use the processes that we are going to learn today to work with any of those singular limiting beliefs that are associated with true imposter syndrome. We absolutely can do that. Okay, I really wanted to make the distinction, though, because I think it has become very blurry. And a true imposter syndrome, although it's not a clinical diagnosis, it could be almost, it is not something to be, is really, really hugely disabling. Okay. And yes, we can work with the limiting beliefs that characterize it. So that's my perspective on imposter syndrome. And then the real difficulty with this, you see, is it's the process of identification. You know what I said earlier about limiting beliefs held at the capability level are easier to deal with than the ones at the identity level. Well, if we're in that space of self-doubt, and then we kind of diagnose ourselves as having imposter syndrome, or someone tells us we have imposter syndrome, well, that is a huge identity level belief. Huge. I don't know if any of those women in that original study actually said, I feel like an imposter, or I am an imposter. I'm not sure, or whether that was simply the label that the researchers put on the whole thing. Either way, I'm not convinced it was very helpful, because as soon as we begin to identify with something, so as it says here, be very, very careful what you wish for. Let's have a look. So the how. We're coming on to the how. Woohoo! Where are we? 1:30. Marvellous. We've got lots and lots of time to go through this. So that's simple, isn't it? How to identify your client's limiting beliefs. Observe, listen, and feel. Watch what they do, listen to what they say, and then tune into, although that's an auditory, that's a listening phrase, feel what they feel. And if you go through that process of stepping into their model of the world, you absolutely will feel what they feel and what it feels like to believe I am just a fat person, I can't lose weight. Okay. So really feel. A lot of identifying limiting beliefs is about trying the thing on that the person says, trying the statement on, and kind of, yeah, that, seeing how it feels. And if it's really super weird and you can't really imagine how, then yeah. So Lynn's put her hand up. I think she might have some questions for me. Shall we do that before I go on? She's been doing.
I'm just seeing in the chat that people are asking if it's possible to have a 5-minute break at this stage if we're good for time.
Yeah, go on, do it. Let's have a 5-minute break before we jump into the how. Okay, no worries at all.
So it's 1:32. So back at 1:37.
Yeah, let's do it. Go on. I think
Thanks, Pam.
And have you got any questions, Lynn, that have been coming in on the?
Yeah, there's a few. One was people couldn't
before.
access the link, but we've sorted that and that's been copied and pasted. Alison asked if she's not a member of the ICF, can she still get a certificate? I thought the answer was probably yes, because it's accredited by the ICF. You don't necessarily have to be a member, is my understanding, but I didn't like to answer it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Brenda had put, yes, my training covered beliefs well in regard to the basics, but we didn't get a lot on how to elicit spot them, which is why I'm here. And I think you're covering that. And she also asked, I didn't 100% understand why helping someone who says I'm not good with money is harder than I can't budget. I kind of summarized what you'd said in the chat, but you might just want to go over that. Harriet mentioned perhaps many perceived beliefs are rooted in culture. And Dawn has asked for, maybe in the Q&As at the end, she'd like to learn more about what NLP techniques should not be used in online sessions. That's it.
Okay, brilliant. Gosh, that last one's how long is a piece of string?
Yeah.
But yes, I think I can explain in general terms rather than providing a list. I could do that privately, but not used.
Yeah, maybe just a few examples.
Okay. So it's the model, neurological levels.
And Yemi's just put one in as well. Apologies, missed the housekeeping. Can I still get a certificate as I'm just going through certification? Yeah, it's not to do with your ICF certification, Yemi. Separate.
Of course you can.
And she said, thanks.
Thank you, Yemi. Yes, the key piece with certificates is to bear with us. They will come out to you. Was it last time? I think it was last time in September, wasn't it? If I pause the can you remind me to start the recording again, Lynn? I'll pause 1 moment. I think it was last September. And I did the same thing. I think we had 3 classes in 1 week, and then I put an extra one on the Monday in the following week. But on sort of, I think the first one, I can't remember, was at 6 in the evening, and then the next one was at midday. I can't remember, but anyway, somebody who did the class at 6 in the evening, the first class, had emailed me by 9:30 the next morning and complained that they hadn't got their certificate yet. I still had 3 classes to teach. I was like, really? Did we not hear anything about that being able to step into someone else's world? Maybe not. It's quite extraordinary. I was like, oh gosh.
Okay. I've just had a direct message from someone I'm just going to copy and send to you as well, Pam.
Oh, okay. Where do I see that?
In a message from me in just a second, hopefully.
In the chat?
Yeah, in the chat. Okay, so we look like we're on time, so you might want to be recording again.
Okay, that's curious.
Hmm.
Right. Right. Okay. Here we go. Are we good? Is everybody back? All right, so we've had a couple of questions in about the difference between the behavior level and capability level and identity. Believe, who was that said that? One of the questions was about not understanding fully the difference between why it should be easier to work with someone who holds a belief of I can't budget rather than I am bad with money.
Yeah, that was Brenda.
Yeah, Brenda. It's simply because there is a huge difference between behaving and having beliefs about our behavior. I can't do something. And then that becoming part of who we are, which it will do eventually. Another example, when I used to work in the fitness industry, I had a lot of my students at the time worked in smoking cessation, so helping people to give up smoking. And that was what the feedback that they always gave me. If somebody walked in and said, I smoke 60 cigarettes a day, versus someone who walked in and said, I am a smoker, even if the person who said, I am a smoker, actually smoked a lot less, they always found it harder to give up than somebody for whom it was simply what they did. Okay, does that help, Brenda? Because it's who they are, and people don't want to give up part of their identity. Whereas it's easier to give up what they do. Okay, not easy, but easier. Okay, and that's a belief as well. They're all there. And then the other one, the NLP techniques not to be used online. There are many. Essentially, the techniques that are really working at an unconscious level, that are designed to discover what sits beneath the surface. And so not simply dealing with what your client is, what's immediately accessible to them because it's within their conscious. Okay. Very specifically, in my opinion, timeline work should not be used online, and all of the processes that sit with timeline work. And that kind of makes sense because what we're doing with timeline work is having somebody to literally revisit their past, and potentially they could remember something that they had previously completely suppressed. What they remember could be traumatic. And if somebody is the kind of person who, when they remember things, remembers them as if they're happening all over again, so what we call in an associated way, if someone, and some people simply have that style, that person could potentially drop into a traumatic memory that they previously had no knowledge of. So one of the biggies, perhaps child sexual abuse, and then you are dealing with someone who is disclosing something for the very first time. They will be extremely distressed, and you're trying to do that over Zoom. And it simply comes down to your legal duty of care. I know, and people say, well, I'm not a therapist. Well, no, you're not, but you're a coach. And if somebody literally has a meltdown, you have a responsibility to that person until you are absolutely sure they are in a safe space, or you can pass that responsibility on to another responsible person until they are. Okay. And that is not something that you want to happen when you are on the other side of the world. Okay. So it just makes sense to me not to use those techniques that mean that is more likely to happen. And that doesn't mean these are bad techniques. They are incredible techniques. I simply believe that they need to be used when you are in the room with your client. Okay? Because that could happen. So again, my soapbox bit. Let's have a look. Lynn's got a question.
Yeah, I think as some people left and then rejoined the session, they're having trouble seeing your screen share. So just wondered if you could stop sharing and reshare, please, Pam.
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
I can do that. I'm not sure what's going on, but are we back on record? Lynn, are we on record?
Yeah, I just checked. It does say pause or stop recording, so it should be recording.
Right.
You just press pause, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I can't see the thing up. Right. So any more questions on what we've covered so far before I move on? We are looking now at Sarah's raised her hand.
Hello, Pam. Can you hear
Hello.
me?
Oh, I can hear from Sarah. for it.
Is that all right? The question was, because we've covered logical levels and then we've covered some of the patterns like generalizations. And there's all sorts of stuff going on. Do you identify what logical level it's at first and then the pattern?
I think they both kind of go together, really, Sarah.
Okay.
So, it really just depends what your head does with it first. Usually when I hear an I am, I hear identity, and then I look at the actual words and whether there's an equals on the end, so whether it's one of those and whether there's a never generalization in there. But I think I normally go with the identity versus capability, behavior, or beyond identity. I think I do that bit first.
Yeah.
And then all of these, because this is what we're looking at now, so that's perfect.
Thank you.
We've got a handy checklist here, because my goodness, there's 10 of these categories that limiting beliefs fall into, and we have met some of them already because we were looking at them when you gave your examples. So here we go. Number 1, anything you can't feel. I think I've mentioned that already. So you step into your client's model of the world and go, okay, not quite sure how they're getting that. Thinking of one belief that a student shared, the real world doesn't allow you to have your own beliefs and values. That still bends my head. I can't try that on. I can't try that on without getting very confused then about, well, which world am I in then if I don't have my own beliefs? And that, yeah, that one, that says to me, that's limiting. So, complex equivalences we have met already. That is the one that we met with the equal sign in. I haven't actually got an equal sign in there, so that's not helpful, but the equal sign would sit between I am and equals, and then the thing, evil, stupid, because it works that way as well with the I am statement. So the previous one we met was I don't have any clients equals I'm not any good at coaching. This one, the equals sits between the I am and the evil or stupid. And your response to it in the moment is exactly the same. It's the reframe. And what else are you? Because okay, this person absolutely believes I am stupid. And they will also believe many other things about themselves. So we endeavor to get them to think about what else. Possibility, we've met those ones already. The I can't be, or I can't have. We've seen those. Negations, we've met those already with the negative in, I don't deserve success. So all of these, when you hear them, limiting belief, limiting belief. Here we go, necessity. Whenever your client uses have to, need to, ought to, should, must, again, that is indicative of there being limiting beliefs, and it suggests that they don't have a choice. Comparative deletions. He is better than me. I am not good enough. We met a lot of those earlier with the enough on. Anytime there is a comparison of any sort, so better, anything with an on the end, or enough. Okay, suggests beliefs. Dissociated language, this is when your client shifts from talking about themselves in the I, in the first person, to talking about you or people or one. I'll come to the end, Sarah, and then I'll come back to you. So we've got the dissociated language. So for example, I was walking down the high street and I went into the shop and I witnessed an altercation. There's someone who didn't have enough money to pay for their shopping. They were getting really angry. And when that happens, you always feel uncomfortable, don't you? It's incredibly subtle, the shift from I to you. And that is simply because we are trying to distance ourselves from whatever it is by not engaging with the emotion. It's a defense mechanism. It's a very sensible defense mechanism. It also suggests that there are limiting, but it's an area to explore, and there are likely limiting beliefs sitting there somewhere. At the very least, it's interesting. Okay. Negative emotions. Whenever anybody talks about one of these or variations thereof, that is again another flag for there being limiting beliefs. In NLP, we describe negative emotions in these 4 categories of anger, sadness, fear, and guilt. Okay. So whenever you hear one of those, that's a tick. Limiting belief. Oh, we have met these, haven't we? The generalizations, that always, the never, everybody always goes wrong. No one thinks I'm any good at anything. It never works. All of those generalizations, limiting belief. And then beliefs about health. When your client identifies with a diagnosis or illness. Well, that is a masterclass, a whole masterclass all on its own. It certainly relates to that point I've made already about when we identify with something. I was taught a lot of my NLP by a remarkable lady called Susie Smith. And her advice when you, for example, have the flu or a cold, is to say, I am fluing or I am colding, and to focus on the process rather than identifying with it, because as soon as we have it, it becomes part of us. And that isn't necessarily helpful when it comes to wanting to recover your health. Very interesting. And as I say, it's a whole other masterclass. Huge topic, huge topic. Something to consider there, certainly. Okay, Sarah, did you have another question on your, following on from your other question on this kind of?
No, I forgot to take my hand down.
Oh, okay. Oh, worry not. So that's how we are identifying limiting beliefs. And I suspected by the time that we got there, we would have met most of those already. And that's your handy checklist for you to download so that you can sit there on a discovery call, ticking, ticking, ticking. And then we're coming on to the how. I've got another question. Katie, I could take that one before I come into the how, just quickly.
Thank you, Pam. Yes, I'm a little confused about the negative emotions necessarily being a negative belief, because in some of the coaching sessions I can recall, if somebody's got anger, that's legitimate, and it's actually a great place to go to continue the conversation. So just this, yeah, that was just something I didn't quite understand.
Okay, let's roll back to it very quickly. It doesn't, I'm not sure how you put it. It doesn't mean that there is a limiting belief. It is simply a flag for explore, particularly if these are negative emotions that have kind of been around for a long time, rather than somebody reacting with anger in the present to somebody's frankly shoddy behavior, in which case, as you say, it's absolutely appropriate. So it's not saying that all the time when someone is angry or sad that means there are limiting beliefs. It's simply a flag and something to explore.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
And when we do timeline work in person, it is that particular sequence of negative emotions that when a client lets go of those, a lot of the limiting beliefs just go at the same time, because it's the negative emotions that are keeping them in place, if you like. So there's a kind of link between them, but that doesn't mean that every time, as you say, in a coaching session, when someone is quite rightly angry and that's the right place for them to be, that's associated with a limiting belief. Does that clear that up? I'm sorry, that wasn't clearer.
Thank you.
Okay. So how are we going to challenge these limiting beliefs? Okay. I think the very first thing that we can do is to bring our clients' awareness to the fact, to their limiting beliefs, and really educate them and explain that a belief is something that we hold to be true, and it may not necessarily be true. And is that something you'd like to explore, particularly when this belief seems to be holding you back? Awareness is the very first step. So bringing it to somebody's awareness in those very, very simple terms, because clients just don't know, they don't understand that change at that identity level is possible. They don't know that, they don't understand that people say that all the time. It's just the way I am, which is a limiting belief in itself, and that's it. They're stuck with it, whatever it is. So I think education, awareness is the very, very first step. Oh, and that really sums it up, doesn't it? Because thinking back to, actually, that was one of them, disorganized, one of the beliefs that you listed in the chat earlier. So the client assumes incorrectly that they are stuck with this version of themselves, being untidy, messy, disorganized person, when in fact it's entirely possible to reinvent themselves. Entirely possible. And awareness is the first step, and then gently cajoling a client to maybe just try on a different belief for size to see how that feels. We're going to come on to some processes that we actually have to do this. Huge question there. One of the best questions I've ever come across in coaching. Who do you need to be to live the life that you want? Because we have our clients, don't we? And they're in place A, and they want to go on a client's journey to point B. So Who do they need to be to take those steps to get there? And the who encompasses the beliefs. So it's and what do you need to believe about who you are and what you are capable of in order to take those steps? And that's splitting it to that identity level and capability level. So who do you need to be and what do you need to believe about who you are and what you are capable of? Big, big questions to open up this conversation. So this idea of reinvention sounds a bit scary, really. Of course, you're the same person. You just upgrade your beliefs that support you. So it's not scary. And I know that some people think that you need the big, big, big NLP techniques in order to facilitate this. And let me tell you, you absolutely don't. You can facilitate this during a coaching conversation using the essence of those big techniques. You don't need the flashing lights and the music and the rah, rah, rah. Believe me, you don't. So here we have some lovely questions and statements that begin to help your client question this thought that they have. So maybe that one, I am a disorganized person, I think it was, that came up in the chat. Oh gosh, there were so many, wasn't there? So you ask them, what is true about this? So they've just said, I am a disorganized person. What is true about this? You're asking them for their evidence. I might also go with and what else are you? Because we also know that I am equals, that's a distortion, and the equals is in there. So, and what else? What else are you? What is true about this? We want to know why they believe this. And then you go in with, is that a belief? Literally, just like that. And they'll go, I've seen clients' face do it. What does she mean? And they might ask you, what do you mean by that? And you can explain, beliefs are what we hold to be true, and they're not necessarily true. And their head will be, and then you can go with, oh, you could choose to believe that. Okay. It's certainly one perspective. And what we're doing there very subtly in stages 3 and 4 is introducing the idea that they have a choice. You could choose to believe that. We've almost gone out into the future to a place where they aren't believing that anymore by doing that. And this is one perspective, which suggests that there are many more perspectives. So do you have a belief about what should be in this situation? Because we know those words, the shoulds, ought tos, musts, sit in the land of limiting beliefs. And they'll probably have quite a lot to say at that point. And then you can go, oh, there's a belief. And there's another one. And that can actually go on for an entire coaching session, because we've heard ourselves during this call. Out they pop, lots of them. And you can get quite playful with that if it's appropriate to. It's not always appropriate to, but it might be, and that can be fun. So, what is true about this? Is that a belief? You could choose to believe that. This is one perspective. And do you have a belief about what should be, what ought to be? And there's a belief, and there's another one. So you're just beginning to shake things up a little bit, very, very gently. Because that's what we need to do before we can actually begin to help our clients lay their old beliefs to rest. It's a phrase I like to use, and actually create new beliefs that are going to be a lot more helpful for them. A lot more helpful. That's a good question to ask yourself when you're coaching. What is the question that I can ask that has the most potential leverage for creating a shift for this client? I used to have that up on my wall. So we're going to look at what we call a conversational template. And it's going to address really how firmly this belief is held. And what we're wanting to do is to move the client on to creating this more helpful belief. So this one, I call this my 7-step template, funnily enough, because the 7 steps, that's original, isn't it? I think we might even have had this one in the chat, didn't we? At the beginning. That's one I've chosen because I've heard it quite a lot. I am too old to start a new career. Identity level, I am equals too old, etc., etc. So step 1, we're going to help our client realize that they're stuck in one way of looking at a situation by asking, and this kind of fits with the process we just looked at, it's more detailed. At this stage, when someone says the belief, is that a belief? Or you could go with, are there other ways of thinking about this? Because that's all beliefs are, they're thought processes. So there could be another way of thinking about it. There could be another thought process. And what if you were to consider a different belief? Which brings us to step 2. Ask them to identify other more helpful beliefs. So what other possibilities are there? And can you think of several other possible beliefs? Not asking you to believe it just yet, but can you think of another way of thinking about this or other possible beliefs that could change how you see the situation? And then we've moved on to, I might be old, but I have plenty of experience. And I am a manager. I've been managing our home and family for years. Those being 2 other possible beliefs that could change how they're seeing this one of I am too old to start a career. So step 3, ask your client to step into, use this phrase earlier, associate into these other different beliefs and to try them on for size to see if they fit. It may or may not work for you. It may or may not work for your clients. But one way that I like to do this is literally by thinking of a jumper. I have a jumper for the new belief. So, and then literally try it on and see how it feels. So I'm quite kinesthetic. So that idea really works for me. It has worked for some clients, not for others. Some clients are totally in their heads and they want to do it all through thinking, and that's absolutely fine. And then you can say, and if this other belief was true, so one of these, if one of those was true, what else might you notice about this situation? And the response is, I actually have a lot of experience and skills to offer. Well, that's moving along, isn't it? From I am too old to start a new career. We've got to, I actually have a lot of experience and skills to offer. Step 4. And which of these other beliefs do you think will be most useful to you as you think about moving into action? So we're thinking about this now, and I've actually got to this point. I can bring real value to this role. Wow. So we're helping them to choose a useful belief. That feels so powerful compared to where we started. And then step 5, help your client create a plan using this new helpful belief. So assuming you believe I can bring real value to this role, what's next? What is the plan? What steps do you want to take? And we've got apply for the job, rewrite my CV, book an interview coaching session with you. Yes, they're a career coach then. Step 6, check whether they are ready to commit to this plan. Are you ready to commit? What would it take for you to commit? And what could stop you from taking action? I am going to go for it. I need your support, but I won't let anything stop me. So we've moved from these are the actions. Are they ready to commit? I'm going to go for it. I'll come to Harriet in a minute. And step 7, encourage your client to take action by using accountability questions with permission if they're comfortable with accountability. So what's the next thing you will do? When will you do it? Would you like to be held accountable? And how do you want to report back to me? So they're going to make a list of all my transferable skills and link them to the job requirements. That sounds like a really smart thing to do. And yes, please. Oh, this is about the accountability. Would you be able to check in on WhatsApp tomorrow? That's what they want to do. So we have gone from I am too old to start a new career to applying for the job and linking their transferable skills to the job requirements. 7 steps. And being able to do that comes down first and foremost to listening, hearing the limiting belief pattern. I don't think you'll ever forget that list that was in the chat. I don't mean each individual one, but the kind of impact of, oh wow, all of those things that people believe, and they're all limiting beliefs. So listening, I am too old to start a new career, limiting belief. And then going through that process, step by step, either in a single conversation, possibly over more than one session. You might need to go 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You might want to create something, which is something that I do with my students. You might want to create something that looks like that you can hand to your clients, that walks them through that process, just so that they begin thinking about it before a session, for example. Okay, somebody had a question. Who was that popped their hand up? Was it just
Harriet?
Harriet? Hello.
Yeah, it was me, and I think you sort of semi-answered it. Thank you for that. I was interested that you went straight to exploring the issue about a role rather than the notion of a career, because it seemed to me that there might be a limiting belief behind even calling it a career. What is a career? What do you understand it to be? And then I also wondered, when you got to the bit about what might the barriers be, it occurred to me that there might be a whole ton of other beliefs that'll merge when exploring those barriers. So you might go round and round on this several times, which I think is what you were saying just now.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. It would be wonderful if clients only had one limiting belief, specific to sort of within a very specific context of applying for a job, and that was it, and there was nothing else to deal with. And in reality, it doesn't happen like that, because there may be other limiting beliefs that are around in other contexts of their life, and it's overlapping with this context. And so, and all you can do in that situation, first and foremost, is not panic, and is simply capture them all. And you may not be able to address them all in a single session, but you can capture them all. I have a limiting belief catcher. It's here. It sits here on this side of my head, and it looks like one of those dream catchers. That's how I see it, if I was to imagine what it looked like. And it's here, and they never get past me because they get caught in this limiting belief catcher. And I don't know if that's helpful to anybody, but sometimes people ask me how I do this, how I actually do this, how I manage to spot them all. And actually, it's not spotting them because that's visual. It's actually hearing them. And that's how I do it. I have my dream catcher. That's just what came out one day when somebody asked me how I did it. And I was like, that's how I do it. Extraordinary, really. But that is the first step. However you do it, whatever you can use, whatever you can pull out of your toolkit to begin to catch these, so that you can work through this process. Or if you simply want to start off with these kind of questions and statements, great place to start. Is that a belief? Okay. So the beauty of these templates are you can mix and match them. You can take a chunk of them and use that chunk. You could, goodness, you could almost have a 7-step program out of those 7 steps there. So very versatile, but boom, boom, boom. Okay. Now then, what we're going to do, where are we for time? Keeping an eye on the time. What else do we have to do? Oh, that's a blank one for you to download and use. I think next. Yes, we are there. Okay, perfect. So what we are going to do for 20 minutes is, where will that take us to? 20 to 3 is Lynn is going to pop you into breakout rooms in pairs. Very simply, one of you is going to be client, one of you is going to be coach. When you are being client, I want you to state that limiting belief that you wrote in the chat earlier, the biggest one that you've ever heard, or the most challenging one that a client has ever presented to you. I want you to be that client for 10 minutes. So yes, it's role play, but we're not getting into let's unpack your own limiting beliefs, because we can't do that in a 3-hour session. So I want you to role play, but I want you to really go for it. I want you to be that client with this bloody great, huge limiting belief. And then your coach is going to use one or other or both of those templates and work through those parts. So where's it gone? I've gone all the way back to that one. Work through one or other or both of these processes as your coach, and you have got this limiting belief. Okay, do you understand the brief? Maybe we'll do 15 minutes actually. I think by the time you're in and out. So if we go with 20, if we come back at 20 to 3, I think that would work. So you've got about 7 minutes each way, something like that. Are you on it, Lynn?
Sorry, couldn't get off mute. Yeah, I'm organising it.
Brilliant. I know this can be.
I think there might just be one. There's a couple of rooms for whatever reason it's saying there's only one person in. If I just open up all the rooms, if anybody's only got one in there, can you just come back into the main room and we'll sort it from there? Just let me know when you're ready for me to open them.
Yep, go for it.
Go for it.
The magic button. See what happens next.
You've all been invited.
Good luck.
Mm-hmm.
I've hit pause already, so.
Okay.
If I stop the share, because nobody can see that anyway. Oh, goodness.
I'm on my own.
Okay. Sorry, I've got something over the names at the moment. There we go.
Brilliant. Okay, so this is our final process, and this is an actual NLP technique. I prefer to call them processes. This one, as you can see at the top of the page, is also by Robert Dilts. He designed the neurological levels model. And this one,
We can't see your screen.
Yeah.
oh, sorry. Here we go. Need to hit the share. Thank you for telling me. There we go. There we go. Can you see it now? Hopefully. All good. So this one brings in an extra dimension. The process is essentially the same, where we have current beliefs. It sounds like you have a belief that is influencing your behavior. How would you describe it? What do you believe about this issue? What is true in this situation? So this aligns with the beginning of the previous process. And when Robert runs this and he's working in person with someone, or you're on one of his trainings, you do actually walk from one space to the next, hence it being called the walking belief change. But you can do this in your head. You can visit each of these stages without actually needing to get up and walk around. Step 2 is open to doubt, which is where you are asking your client, are you beginning to question this belief? Is there some doubt in your mind? Think of a time when you first began to question an old belief? And is that similar to how you feel now? So that's open to doubt. And the extra dimension here is what Robert calls the Museum of Old Beliefs. And this is where you can say to your client, at one time, this belief served you. And I understand that you no longer want to hold this belief, but rather than throwing it away, which is what people often want to do, you might want to imagine putting it in a museum with other old beliefs, like a belief in Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy. So beliefs that you used to believe and you now know are no longer true, because your brain has a way of filing old beliefs. The old belief won't influence your life, but it will stay in the museum. And then, of course, it moves on to the piece that we want to get to, the desired new belief. What belief would serve you better at this point in your life? What would you rather be doing? How would you state this preferred belief? So you get your client's words around this new belief so that they can craft it in a way. We don't ever suggest to them, well, perhaps you could believe X, Y, Z. We actually want them to explore and discover the words are actually going to work for them. And it's sometimes the exact opposite of the one that you're putting in the museum, but it may not be exactly. It might be expressed slightly differently. And then we move to open to believing. Do you sense that this new belief may be true? Are you open to believing something different from your old belief? Are you ready to embrace a new belief? And think of a time when you were open to a new belief. You may not have totally accepted it, but you were open to the possibility. And then you move finally to the sacred beliefs, and you ask your client, what are their most dearly held beliefs? Because we have a way of filing those in our heads. And then you ask them, what would your life be like if you held this new belief in the same way? So maybe the old belief was, I'll never be successful. And the new desired belief is, I can be successful, or I am successful. And then you go to here, and then finally to sacred beliefs. What would your life be like if you held this new belief of, I want to be successful, I am successful, in the same way? And then your brain will begin to do the work for you and file that new belief that isn't quite real yet in the way that it files its sacred beliefs. That is a really, really clever process. You've got a chart there for you to fill in. Okay. And there's some more stuff that you might want to read. I've put an article in for you, which is one I wrote a long while ago. And then my favorite quote around beliefs, which you may probably haven't come across before. You can choose to reside in a place of fear, a place where you doubt who you are and what you are capable of, or you can choose to believe in the best version of yourself. And yes, that was Detective Mac Taylor on CSI New York in 2009. So inspiration from all kinds of interesting places. There we go. Right, I think we are just about on time, and I have time to take any questions if you have any questions at all. For those of you who might be interested in my forthcoming program, we'll be putting all of the information, won't we, Lynn, into an email that will go out. I think Lynn has popped my calendar link in the chat and one of our pages. So have a look at those. I don't want to keep you if we're past time. I can hang around and answer a few questions now. As I say, I might do an impromptu Q&A extra practice session on Friday, but we'll keep you posted on that. Kathy, do you have a question? Do you want to just ask me?
Yes, please. Thank you. Excellent session. Really good content. Thank you very much. And one of the questions I have is that you mentioned about being discerning about which techniques you might use because you don't want to uncover trauma if you're working online. And I was just curious about that because when we're working online, I would imagine that often we are working underneath the surface with the unconscious, and we may not intentionally uncover a trauma, but we might. And so I was just curious about how you might deal with that, because I'm not sure that any of us here would intentionally want to uncover a trauma, but at the end of the day, we might.
Well, you might. And frankly, if somebody's ready to implode, melt down, it doesn't take very much, just literally coming to a coaching session. If somebody is at that point, then, you know, there it is, and you have to deal with it. The reason we don't use those particular techniques is because it means it is more likely to happen. And you are absolutely correct. It could happen anyway. It could happen in a very regular surface level coaching session, even just depending on where somebody is at. What to do if it does happen, literally, is hold the space, be there, listen, simply listen. If somebody is extremely distressed, then the tools we have in NLP to help them get out of that state, which are easier to use in person, are what we call break state, because they've kind of dropped into a state and it's a trauma state. So we need to try and get them out of that into another state. And one way you can do that, movement is very helpful, is actually get them up and move and actually say, can you get up off your chair for a moment for me, but stay within camera? Okay, so get them to get up, stand up, walk behind their chair so you can still see them. And then start talking to them about what they had for breakfast. I know that sounds bizarre, but what you're doing then is tapping into a different sensory modality, and that will be really helpful. Something else you can do is start talking to them about mundane things that they need to do, like walking the dog, picking the kids up, obviously. Try and tap into the things that they have to do, that they do on automatic, but they happen in the day-to-day, because that can switch things around as well. And other than that, just listen, 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 be there for somebody. And the thing is about states, they always pass. Awful states pass eventually. We can't stay in an awful state indefinitely. Sadly, happy states pass too. We can't stay in a happy state indefinitely. So the thing to do as a coach and a practitioner is not to panic. This will pass. And you can say that to your client. Any breathing stuff that you know that you think might help, I'm hoping this is helpful. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here what I would actually do. But for me, that key is getting them up off the seat and moving, and get them to stand behind, and then talk about something else at the appropriate moment. So they may need to just be where they are, or they may need you to pull them out of where they are very, very quickly. And that isn't something we can ever anticipate, and it really is thinking on your feet. And no, nobody would intend for that to happen. And I think the other thing that is useful to hold on to as a coach, and perhaps you are dealing with something which is really out of your scope of practice, is that I truly believe that something like that will only happen if the person has the resources. The person has the resources to deal with it, and it won't come up like that in that way if on some level, unless they are ready to actually deal with it. And it may not look like that. It may look like an awful mess, but that is, we're here talking about beliefs. That is one of my beliefs, that if it happens, then the person is able to deal with it. And it's your job to help them access those resources and to help them do that. I'm not saying they don't need support, of course they do. But I believe that our unconscious minds look after us, and they wouldn't present that to be dealt with if the person wasn't able to deal with it.
And I think, yeah, thank you, Pam. And the only bit that I would add to what you said, and you alluded to it just a second ago, is you said resources. And I think from my point of view, I think if I think it's outside of my capability, then I'd refer them.
Yes, absolutely.
Resources.
Absolutely. Yes.
And signpost them to get support as well, so they weren't left hanging.
Absolutely, that is exactly what you do. And if it happens in the moment in a coaching session, even if it is outside of your scope of practice, you still have to deal with it, because you are the person at that point with the legal duty of care. So you can't just say to someone, not my scope of practice, and kind of bump them out of the Zoom room. That wouldn't be okay. And I'm sure nobody would do that. But we have to deal with it. And then, as you say, once you've helped that person get to a safe space where they're back in the present and functioning, then absolutely you would want to refer them to somebody who can help them navigate that. And you may want to carry on with them as a coach as well, if that's appropriate, or be there as an option further down the line. But yes, very good point. I hope that is helpful. But the other piece about getting somebody up is actually then to get them to look up, because when we look up, we feel better. It's no accident that when people are not feeling great, they kind of end up down here somewhere. If you can get them up and looking up, and they'll feel better. And yeah, sounds silly, but try and get them to smile, because then we feel better too. There might be something in there that you can do that. Nina's got her hand raised. Hello, Nina.
Hi, I do. Thank you for a brilliant session. It was great, really, really fab to hear all your amazing information and insight. I have a quick question, not about well, it is about my coaching practice, but I'm actually doing some doctoral research at the minute in a phenomenon where women have this belief about themselves. And so it's a belief that they're going to be mothers, and they're going to be mothers of a certain sex child. And when that child isn't born, they kind of get stuck.
Ooh.
Yeah. So and I've interviewed lots of women as part of this research, but for some of the women, they have forever imagined themselves. Interestingly, it wasn't a criteria, but they're all mums of boys, and they all imagine themselves to have a daughter. And the majority of the women are stuck. They've had this belief since they can remember. It's not come to happen. And I just wondered if you had, because I was sort of grappling with it in my own mind as this belief, and how you kind of get them to reframe when they can't let go of that hope that there might still be a chance, but it's really causing a lot of turmoil in their life. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts or insight or wise words.
And is there no option just in the reality of it for them to keep trying? Is that part of it, that there isn't an option for them to try again?
Yeah, so what I see with these women is they all have multiple children of one sex. They all happen to be boys. And for those women that have got to the point of they've come to accept that they can't have more children, then they've managed to move on. But for the majority of the women, women can have children into their 50s now, and they could go to Cyprus or America and pay for sex selection. They could perhaps stop contraception and not tell their husband. So for a lot of them, they're still clinging on to the hope that this belief can happen, even though in reality they can't afford it, they can't manage it, they don't want 6 children. Yeah, I'm kind of stuck with it.
It sounds very much to me, and it would need to be adapted. I'd have to think about that and look at the other processes. That really sounds like a Robert Dilts process. You need a museum of old beliefs in there.
Right. Okay.
That is where that belief has to go.
Right.
I'm going to ponder on this. That is so.
Yeah.
That is.
It seems to me that it's the relinquishment, it's the giving up of that hope that underpins the belief is where they're struggling, because they can't give up on it while it exists and while that belief then still lives on inside them. And a lot of them will say, but I know that boys can love their mums like a daughter can. I know that my daughter might not get married or have children. So we go back to that kind of archive of where's this situated? Where do you believe this to come from? But even though their rational brain tells them, they just can't let go of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you asked, when unpacking positive intention of a limiting belief, again, is something that's online, maybe not, it depends. So it depends how you're working with them. What we do in an NLP breakthrough session, and we're way down the line here in master practitioner stuff and sort of a therapeutic application of NLP, but what you do is keep asking what not letting go of the belief that, and then state the belief, is doing for them. What is not letting go of it doing for them? And whatever that is, you then keep asking. It's called chunking up that question. And what is that doing for you? And what is that doing for you? Because it's in there. And then you have to flip it almost to chunk back down, depending on where you get to. It's a wee bit hard to explain without a real life. And it's finding out what it means about them. What would it mean about them if they were to let go of that belief?
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm heading with the idea of this sense of self-worth and value, and I think these women have always been able to conquer their dreams. They've always been very proactive women, and the barriers they've managed to overcome, but this one they can't. And so I think it's looking at those beliefs in themselves. Does that make sense? Have I explained that very well?
Yes.
Yeah,
very well, and it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
I've really keep coming back to some adaptation of the Museum of Old Beliefs, because the thing is with the Museum of Old Beliefs, you're not letting go of the belief, you're simply
acknowledging.
Ever words would work, but it's almost like, well, what's coming to me? Because when you want a child, you know what it will feel like to hold that child, even though you don't yet have them.
Exactly it.
And it's almost like
it is
to take that baby
Yeah,
that's never come to pass,
exactly that. Yeah,
and the belief, and they go together into
Yeah.
this cradle
yeah,
inside the museum of old beliefs. And that's why I love NLP, because it is incredibly creative. But
Yeah.
that I think is what somebody,
yeah,
you
Yeah,
know,
that's
to,
great.
to hold on for as long as they need to, and then
Yeah,
not ever losing that. They're never losing it. They're just keeping them in a safe place. Does any of that sound like it might?
yeah, no, it does. It does. It makes a lot of sense. And I will think about this now moving forwards. And as I work with my women, it's, yeah, thank you. Really insightful.
I think that's where I would be going if I happen to have somebody in that situation.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, there's a lot there, a lot of feminism, you know, women and children and our purpose and our power. It's multi-layered, and that's why this the NLP and the kind of limiting beliefs is a take that's not, well, this hasn't been researched really in the world anyway, but it is fascinating. So thank you.
absolutely fascinating. Really, really, really very interesting.
Thank
So
you.
keep me posted, and let me know if you come up with anything to.
1 year to go until it's published. I will. Thank you.
How amazing. Has anyone else got a question that you want to ask me, or are you all staying to listen in? Because that's fine too. Do we have any more questions? Lynn, are there any in the chat? I hope it's been helpful. I was going to ask everybody to put in the chat what you got out of the session and how you're going to apply it. So that's certainly something for you to be thinking about, is how you go away and actually use these processes with your clients. Have a plan. I think it's always good to have a plan, even if on the day you can't really use it. It's good to have a plan and an intention to practice particular pieces. And yeah, obviously you have to be client led, but I think it's helpful to kind of have an intention. And even if it's only, I'm going to have a dream catcher one day and listen out. Yvonne, do you want to ask me? Where's Yvonne gone?
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Yvonne.
I'll pop up.
Question.
So thanks so much, Pam. Just one question that came to my mind when you talked about almost kind of like trying it on in terms of their view of the world. And I wondered how we might notice our own bias in that, because I guess there's times when you maybe relate very easily with the scenario and very easily picture how that could be either normal or whatever the right language is we might want to put in it. And another time where, because of our view of the world, we feel like that's, so if I put in a practical example, I would be a glass half full person. I struggle with glass half empty. And I'm just wondering how I might miss stuff then because of a bias, and how you might protect against that or have an increased awareness for that. That's where I was going with it.
Of course. Well, I think in the process of rapport and stepping into somebody's model of the world and being in their model of the world, one thing that I do when I do that is, before I do that, is to think about the Robert Dilts model. So I'll think about, what's this person's environment like, and what's their life like, and who are the other people in it, what do they do, what don't they do, all of their behaviors, what hobbies do they have. And then I'll start to think about, from what I can see from where I am, from my position, what do I know about what they value, what's important to them, what their beliefs might be, and then who they are beyond identity. So I think about all of that before I step into their model of the world. And somewhere in that process of stepping in, and I might do it physically literally kind of move, and at least in my head, I do my absolute best to leave myself where I was in first position, so that hopefully takes care of some of those perspectives and biases. But that is a process that takes years of practice, and we can think we're in rapport with somebody, and then actually we're seeing it from our point of view, not their point of view. So it takes practice, and there's several, you could look them up. There's several processes sort of stepping into second position. There's one called meta mirror, where you it's about understanding a relationship. So it could be a challenging client where you do the process I've just said, and then you see something from your point of view, and then you kind of shake yourself off and go stand in the position where you were seeing them, and you leave you where you were, and then you go and be them, and then come back, and then you go into a third position and see the relationship from a distance, from a neutral observer position. So in everything we do in NLP, we're practicing leaving ourselves in first position when we're going into second position or third. So I think that's with the intention of leaving those biases and perspectives behind as well. And that sounds easy, and it isn't always easy. And we don't always want to step into somebody else's world, and that's okay too. We don't have to build rapport with everybody just because in theory we can. There may be many good reasons to say, I really don't want to step into your model of the world. You're welcome to it. Thank you. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you're any less of a coach or a practitioner. That means you have a choice about who you work with. Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's really useful. I don't know if you noticed me smile when you talked about the physically move, and I went, yeah, that immediately kind of landed. And then you've reminded me of a practice that we did in training, and I probably hadn't as practical an example of how that could apply for me as a coach. So that's really useful. Thank you.
Yeah. And you can do that to give yourself feedback as well. If you leave yourself in first position and go to third, you can look back at yourself and give yourself feedback. And that's something that we often do when to help someone develop that ability to help them build a kind of ability to give themselves feedback, because sometimes people rely on external feedback very heavily. So that's to help someone. So we use that. Anyway, I digress. But yes, look that one up, Meta Mirror, and all about how you step from one position to another position. And it's a privilege, though, to go and be and sit in somebody else's model of the world. It's an absolute privilege. You can see note-taking still going. Bless you. Still taking notes. Oh, so brilliant. My gosh. Well, thank you for staying. And it's been really enjoyable. And I apologise again for the breakout kerfuffle, but there's not a lot we can do about that, unfortunately. I think we have a sort of technique now for putting people into another room, but it wasn't immediately obvious how we could do that. So anyways, I'm sorry about that, but thank you for bearing with us. And yeah, do you have any questions for me? As I say, I think I'll do a session on Friday to chat about my program and so on and so forth. So there you go. Excellent. All right. Well, we'll be in touch. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, lovely to see you. There's Lynette. I saw Lynette go flying past. Hello. Oh, Philip is still not real. Okay. Philip, let's have his name, because I'm not, he wasn't in a breakout room, was he? No. I think it's really hard to take names and, oh, hang on,
That's yeah.